Good morning. My name is Todd Sanders, and I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Chamber. We appreciate you joining us for today's webinar featuring Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego. I'd like to begin by thanking today's sponsors who really continue to demonstrate their commitment not only to the Chamber, but to our community and to our state. So a virtual round of applause for APS, SRP, and Fennemore Craig for their strong support. We really appreciate that. As all of you know, today's discussion is extremely important to our community, business community as well. The COVID-19 crisis has put our businesses and our elected leaders in an unparalleled position. As your chamber, we are committed to ensuring you have the opportunity to hear from and dialogue with our state's top leaders and influencers. And obviously today's no exception. In a few moments, Mayor Gallego will share some updates from the city of Phoenix, and we'll hear how they are providing necessary resources to our business community, as well as the community at large, as well as how we can prepare for the next few weeks and few months coming up into the future. Mayor Gallego, we thank you for your time today and for your strong leadership during this unprecedented time. So to quickly review today's agenda, we'll begin with some comments from our sponsor, Fennemore Craig. We'll hear from our guest of honor, Mayor Gallego. And then we're going to take some questions, and you can submit your questions via the Q&A box on the side of your screen. We'll attempt to get through as many questions as possible, time permitting. So with that, now my privilege to introduce James Goodenow, who is the president and CEO of our sponsor, Fennemore Craig, to share some remarks, and of course, to introduce our guest of honor. James, take it away.
Thank you, Todd. I'm pleased to be here. Like many of you, I'm here in my home office. I've got my two little kids on the other side of this door. So if that door breaks open and paper airplanes shoot across the screen or hula hoops roll in, sorry, that's the new reality we're in. Speaking of our new reality, if there's one thing that people, businesses, leaders value, it's certainty. Certainty about safety, certainty about when businesses will reopen, certainty about the economy. But let's be honest, this COVID situation doesn't give us a lot of certainty. So when we find it, it's especially reassuring. And I'm sure that all the Phoenicians on this line here, all 430 of you will agree with me that one place we have certainty is in our leadership. Mayor Gallego has been a steady hand through this COVID crisis. She's engaged with federal, state, local lawmakers, but she's also engaging with the business community, the private sector, all of you on this line. She's providing information, but she's also listening and getting feedback. And that's the reason that I'm confident that Phoenix is going to come out on the other side of this crisis stronger than ever. On a personal note, I've known Mayor Gallego for the last decade. When I first met her, she was Kate, but I knew others knew that she was going places. And I think we're all pretty dang lucky that one of those places is to a spot that can help all of us in Phoenix. So please join me in giving a very warm Zoom welcome to your Phoenix Mayor, Kate Gallego.
Thank you. Thank you, James, for that wonderful introduction and for hosting this conversation. I want to thank Todd and the Chamber leadership for bringing people together and making sure everyone has the best possible information, including elected officials, hearing from the business community during this difficult time. Communication has never been more important. I also want to thank Todd and the leadership of the Phoenix Chamber, Mike Hummel, for talking with me, particularly in the early days of COVID-19, as we talked about what was the best way to protect this community and how to come through this with the best possible results for the city of Phoenix. So Todd, thank you for your counsel when we were making the very difficult decisions at the beginning, and your continued support as we talk about what comes next and how do we position the city of Phoenix in the best possible way in the post-COVID-19 era and as we see great changes. So thank you to all of you for joining here today. I can certainly identify with what James said about home offices, and my 3-year-old has made appearances on more Zoom and WebEx meetings than I had ever expected. It turns out he's particularly interested in fire, police, and streets department when they are talking about anything with trucks. If there's a picture of a truck on the screen, I lose the ability to get him to focus on the other things he were doing. I'm trying to use, thank you to ASU who's put on curriculum online, including for preschool students, because we're hoping that the learning still continues during these untraditional circumstances. But every time there's a truck on the screen, the preschool curriculum does seem to lose out. I'm thankful to his dad today for daddy daycare, so I don't think he will be joining us during this conversation. And I like to start out all of my conversations by saying thank you to the people of this community for all you are doing to slow the spread. ASU just put out new data about the curve in our community, and we have indeed flattened the curve. We are seeing the decline in the rate of transmission, and that means lives saved. One of the difficult parts of COVID-19 is the costs are very real. We know people who have lost their jobs, who have had unimaginable stresses, whether you were going through divorce or a difficult family situation. Anything is harder with COVID-19, and so the costs are very real, but the benefits from the actions we have taken are not as immediate. You don't know who are the people whose lives you've saved by staying home, but the ASU data shows clearly we are saving lives in this community. So whether you are staying home, whether you've cut back on your business, or whether you have pivoted your business or you provide essential services, all of that is so key. So whatever you are doing now to flatten the curve, I just, on behalf of the city, want to say thank you. The costs have been very, very high, but we have saved lives in this community. I have a very close family member right now who has cancer and is in the middle of chemotherapy, and so incredibly vulnerable immune system. And it does make me proud that people have been willing to make changes to protect those who are vulnerable, like my family member. Before I went into the City of Phoenix Life, I worked in the utility industry, and I think many of us in the utility industry have a good friend who will be having cancer surgery next week. And so for me, I found it very valuable to think about the people who we are protecting with these great sacrifices, because it's been very difficult. But for me, it helps to think whether it's a grandmother, a vulnerable person who has medical challenges, that those are the people who we are doing this to protect. And so again, as mayor, just want to say thank you, because all of these changes are making a difference. We are flattening the curve, and we will need to continue to do so for a while. People have talked about the metaphor of a parachute. You put out a parachute and it slows you down, but you don't stop using it just because you have slowed down your descent. You got to wait until you are safe to put away the parachute. And so we are trying to get the best possible data in this community, in particular testing, to help us make those decisions and understand what comes next. The business community has been a huge partner in these difficult times. I want to thank utilities who have worked with their customers and who are providing essential services even to those who are not current on their account. The City of Phoenix provides water service, which is so vital, that hand washing right now. And we did turn back on service for customers, those residential customers who weren't current on their bills, but who need water in this essential time. And now, as I understand it, we have no residential customers who don't have service in the City of Phoenix now. So we hope that contributes to the spread as well. But thank you to utilities who have contributed to wildfire, who are keeping service for their customers, to our telecommunications partners who are helping students have access to e-learning right now. Really appreciate that. I am grateful to all those, such as On Semiconductor, who supported our City of Phoenix supply drive for essential public safety equipment. On donated those famous N95 masks. We've had other partners who donated gloves, cleaning equipment. Levine Investments and Outfront provided advertising that helped us drive people to that. And it was so successful that we've been able to send supplies to the Navajo Nation, which very much has needed essential safety equipment, as well as Circle the City, which is providing such essential services on the medical side to people experiencing homelessness right now. So anyone who supported that supply drive or the ones by our hospitals, thank you so much. Other businesses have totally changed their business model to support a safer Phoenix. Arena Merchandising, which used to do embroidered promotional merchandise, is now manufacturing face masks for frontline healthcare professionals and first responders, and currently fulfilling orders for 1.4 million of the face masks for 3 local healthcare systems, medical transport, transit, and hospice organizations, as well as law enforcement. And now Arizona residents can order face masks using code Arizona at the website tourmask.com. Honeywell has been a great partner for us at the City of Phoenix and major employer. They primarily do aerospace manufacturing in our market, but they are an industrial technology company and globally manufacture a significant number of other products. Honeywell reached out to Phoenix with the opportunity to adapt part of their vacant manufacturing facility to manufacture N95 masks, and we were able to move very quickly and quietly at the time to support their plan to ramp up that facility. So that plan was in place before their recent announcement, and we are working with them to expedite tenant improvements. They are in the process of hiring 500 Phoenix workers to manufacture masks at the location. And at capacity, we'll be able to produce 10 to 12 million N95 masks in Phoenix. So thank you to thank you to Honeywell for being a longtime partner, but stepping up when we needed those masks. I had not heard of an N95 mask, I'm embarrassed to say, last year, but now it's something we think about all the time. For our first responders, particularly paramedics, can be incredibly close to the patients they serve, and they need these essential masks. We used to be able to buy them for 85 cents, and now they are going on the market for $6. Congressman Stanton and Gallego have been doing a lot of work to try to make sure that vendors are not, that we have access at a fair price, is a good way to say it, to these essential masks, which matter to our healthcare workforce, but also to police and firefighters and other folks who have to be working. So many of us are staying home so that they can work safely, but we also need to make sure we get them the essential equipment they need. And we've had good partners in that, and are actually trying to support the testing industry. We've learned that one of the big constraints to doing more testing in this community is the lack of protective equipment. And so as we work with our supply chain, we're also trying to support laboratory companies so that we can do more testing. Thank you to TGen, to Mayo, to Banner, to our universities who have stepped up with testing in a big way. LabCorp, I got to work with them as a councilwoman to bring them to Phoenix, and so glad they are there. More than 500,000 tests in our country. Sonoran Quest has been our biggest tester so far, with the Arizona market ramping up in a big way, and they've gotten some key deliveries. Let's see, they have now more than 30,000 tests ordered and turning them around in about 33 hours. So getting us the data we all need to understand where we are. Walgreens will be opening in Western Maricopa County. I keep trying to get them to come to Phoenix, but the first location will not be in Phoenix. Free testing for everyone through a drive-up facility. And that is the Abbott Quick Test, which delivers results in 15 minutes. So that should also help us dramatically expand testing. Their first location is likely to not be on bus service. So right now we're trying to figure out, can we move bus service to accommodate the Walgreens testing line, or how can we make sure everyone in our community gets access to that testing? I am concerned right now about gaps in testing and certain parts and certain zip codes that I think do not have the access to testing that they need. Also want to give huge credit to Arizona State University, who has been willing to work with us to test our essential workers. Right now, we have strong capacity with Phoenix Fire and Phoenix Police, but we want to make sure if anyone does have COVID-19, that we catch it quickly so that we can have appropriate medical support for those individuals, and protections including quarantine for those who may have been exposed, so that we can continue to have our first responders at high strength levels. We've seen other cities such as Detroit and New York where their first responders have been among the hardest hit, and we are trying to learn from that. So thank you to ASU and their super smart robots for helping us with that testing so that we can do the work to keep this community safe, because we know how vital those first responders can be. University of Arizona has also been vital in increasing testing, and they may have the possibility to help us as well with mobile testing, which could be key for some of our communities that particularly where we need access to data. Sometimes the testing locations don't follow the need. And NAU has been a workhorse in our clinicians and the folks who are out there. So many NAU grads, GCU grads, and community college grads who have been out in the community. Phoenix was the fastest growing city in the United States. We may still be. Take your census so that we can get that data. So if you haven't done that, it takes 10 minutes, you can do it at home. But as the fastest growing city, healthcare has been, for much of the last year, our leading industry. And I am so grateful that we've had that hiring and the new workforce, universities graduating like U of A, doctors early to be out there and support us, but also technicians have been essential and nurses have been essential. And all of that new investment, whether Banner building in Phoenix, Mayo building in Phoenix, has helped us be better positioned to get through this particular crisis. Our top two industries have been, over the last year, construction and healthcare. And in some of the economists I've talked to say that may continue as we move into other phases of COVID-19. Those key industries may continue to leave, although perhaps in slightly different areas than we had expected. And some of our healthcare companies are pivoting in a big way. Passport Health was the largest provider of travel immunizations. They're based in Scottsdale, but they've been moving to helping companies do some of the testing for their workforce, like temperature checks, to help you manage those essential workers who still need to be there. We've always been a leader in this market in telehealth, but huge growth in those companies. And I think in those particular areas, we are well positioned for the coming days. Our economy may need to pivot towards some of those areas where we already had strength. We also do have pharmaceutical manufacturing in Phoenix, which is not true of many large cities. If we as a country make a decision that that's an area where we want to continue, Phoenix already has expertise. And so again, I think we are well positioned, and I look forward to working with the Chamber of Commerce, GPEC, and other organizations to take advantage of strengths that will help the entire United States, but again, will help Phoenix come out of this with as much strength as possible. We have an amazing, hardworking team in our community and economic development group led by Christine Mackey. She has reached out to thousands of businesses now in Phoenix to talk to them about what they need during this difficult time. Some of the innovation that came out of that was we created videos to help people navigate the SBA loan process, which was very confusing for many businesses. We also heard that companies needed not just loans, but grants. In partnership with the Community Foundation, the Phoenix Industrial Development Authority, and APS, we launched grants for our smallest businesses, those with 25 or fewer employees. And we hope that those will help the most vulnerable businesses get through that. So their grants in the $10,000 range. So for a huge company, that may not make a difference, but we hope for a small restaurant that might be enough to help you get through. We know our small businesses are so important to the vitality of this community, and we are trying to support them in that way. We also hugely value our arts and culture organizations. And the City of Phoenix has been supporting the Arizona Commission on the Arts efforts to get grants to our nonprofits who have been hit so hard by this. Our performing arts companies cannot perform to large audiences, and so key revenue from ticket sales have collapsed, but it's hurt all of our arts organizations in very deep ways. I participated in the Arizona Citizens for the Arts Hearts for Arizona, which was a 24-hour virtual telethon featuring live performances, appearance by artists, chefs, celebrities, and business owners statewide. And if you have the ability to participate in philanthropy, the Arizona Community Foundation and other partners are providing grants to those arts organizations. So many really important entities that make Phoenix great need our support now. And it comes at a time where both the state of Arizona and the city of Phoenix are featuring significant declines in revenue. For the city of Phoenix, more than 70% of our general fund is dependent on sales tax dollars. We do not have a food tax in the city of Phoenix. So as people are spending less, buying less, that does impact our budget. We don't know March data yet, but we are anticipating significant declines. The city of Phoenix on Monday met and unanimously placed some cuts to our budgets. We have gone to a hiring freeze. Except for public safety personnel, and we are not purchasing vehicles except for essential public safety vehicles right now. So trying to make some changes, also looking at some of our land purchases and whether we could get some revenue into our general fund that way, and just trying to start early. We want to respond as early as possible in the hopes that the cuts will not be as deep if we react quickly. Many cities have furloughed workforce or let them go, and we have not yet done that in the city of Phoenix. So we hope early action will make it a little bit less difficult later on. But like all of you, it is tough times, and we have to make hard decisions. It feels like with COVID-19, you are often picking back between two terrible options. And I know that's true for many of our business leaders as well, but hopefully we can work together, talk together, and get through this with as much partnership as possible. It has spurred some innovation at the city of Phoenix. We are investing more and more in smart government and online services. We've seen a dramatic increase in the number of online permits, including for construction. Construction is essential in Arizona and is still going forward. We are still providing permits at the city of Phoenix. We do ask if you have an inspector who has to come out, please practice appropriate social distancing, and we hope that everyone is doing the smart things. When you're with other people, please wear masks and keep our employees safe and yours as well. But we've gone to more virtual inspections, particularly for some residential projects, like if you get a new sewer line or gas line, you can hold up one of these devices and work with the inspector to do a virtual inspection, which has benefits that will last beyond COVID-19. Much easier to do scheduling for virtual inspections, and you can do it from home. Our inspectors they spend more time inspecting and less traveling. So we hope that kind of innovation at the city will continue after COVID-19, and that we'll become a smarter city as well. I'm also enjoying doing meetings with yoga pants on from home and saving time, and so maybe we can do more of that as well, and find ways to really learn from COVID-19. I feel like we've all become better at these virtual meetings, and I think I've now downloaded 16 different platforms, from Adobe to Zoom to WebEx to Microsoft to BlueJeans. So perhaps there will be some good innovation that can last. With that, I think I will conclude my remarks and open it up for your ideas, comments, and questions.
Well, Mayor, thank you. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for the leadership. James, appreciate you kicking us off. Well, and also a reminder to those our viewers, please go ahead and submit your questions via the Q&A box, and we'll get through as many of those as possible. But you know, in your beginning of your comments, you talked about that day. It seemed like so long ago, Mayor, that you called me to tell me that you were going to close the bars and restaurants and wanted to know our thoughts. And I told you I supported you. I think it was the right thing to do. Interesting to note that your data tells you that we are flattening the curve. That's the best possible news, and it's hard because it's an abstract type of activity, like you mentioned. Can you give us a sense for how Phoenix is doing compared to our other cities of our size around the country?
Thank you, and thank you again for your partnership in that difficult time. I joined several other mayors. Flagstaff was the first mayor, Coral Evans, but Mayor Romero and others early on in trying to act quickly. We did shut down bars right before St. Patrick's Day, and hoping that did slow the spread. We did learn, I think New Orleans wishes they had now shut down Mardi Gras. I think Wuhan, China wishes they had not had as many people moving for Chinese New Year. There is real data showing that large events have contributed significantly to the spread of COVID-19. And so we hope that action and others did contribute to keeping Phoenix safer. A funny fact this week, I was talking to our airport director, and Phoenix Sky Harbor, he told me that day, was the busiest airport in the United States. So it's funny for me to be talking to the head of the Phoenix Chamber. When I was elected, we were the 12th busiest airport, and this week we hit the busiest airport in the country. And it's funny to share that statistic and not be necessarily excited about it as being good news. We had only 5,400 people go through TSA security on the day we were the busiest airport in the country. So it is a staggering decline. Air traffic is down 95% across the country, but not as down quite as deeply in Phoenix. Part of that is we have not had quite as many air carriers that have completely suspended service, although we obviously were impacted by the president's executive order ending travel from Europe. So those flights are not happening, and many of them will be not back until we think October, or at least that is the current schedule. But it is an indicator that Phoenix has not been hit as deeply as some of America's large cities. We are the 5th largest city in the country. And if you are looking at what New York City is going through, what Chicago is going through, we have not had that level of stress on our healthcare system, which is good news. And I want to really thank our healthcare CEOs who were early out there talking about the importance of physical distancing. Their leadership saved lives in this community and was very influential for me and my decision. The Arizona Nurses Association, others who were out there early saying, we can save lives if we act. And some of the cities are facing challenges through no fault of their own, but really tough times. My brother lives in New York, and talked about there was a morgue truck with bodies parked right out in front of where he lives. I think everyone in New York seems to know many people who we have lost through COVID-19, and we do here too in the Valley. Certainly, the first Arizonan to die from COVID-19 was a City of Phoenix employee and someone who I respected deeply. So it is personal for so many of us here, but we are not seeing the stresses on our healthcare system that some of the other large American cities are seeing. And if you look at ASU models, we are not at our peak yet, so we still have to continue to be vigilant, but I think it's fair to celebrate a little bit the flattening of our curve, because we have all made sacrifice to do it.
Well, it is indeed something to celebrate. I absolutely agree with you, Mayor, and quick action certainly made a difference there. You mentioned Sky Harbor. I saw a stat that talked about, for instance, March. I don't know. I think it was that one day's worth of travel last year equaled all the travel that happened in the country for the whole month of March. And so certainly we've seen some impacts there. Thinking about Sky Harbor and the fact that it is an important economic engine for Arizona, we're glad to see that they did receive some financial relief through the CARES Act. Are there any plans to provide a relief to the concessionaires and other folks that operate the airport that are so important to us through this time?
Yes, so we've seen more than 1,000 employees who worked in concessions at Sky Harbor who are not working right now. Huge impact, and we have some amazing small businesses at the airport who, again, are part of that vitality and what we love about Phoenix. We love being greeted by our favorite restaurants when we go to Sky Harbor, and so we do want to support them and help them make it through. And the city council will meet on that topic next week to try to support them and help them, as well as our workers who at the airport, to try to get through that. We are so grateful for what they've done to make Sky Harbor Airport a special place, and we want to support them. So that will likely be coming in the next week. We also understand that the airport is an important economic engine. The airport was able to issue debt on their significant expansion plans before COVID-19, and our current plan is to continue to support that expansion plan. We think about 3,000 construction workers are helping build Sky Harbor. The SkyTrain construction is important to making sure Sky Harbor Boulevard is getting quite congested. Can we take those cars off and have a better operating airport? We have plans to expand terminal access. During COVID-19, we did, if you've seen some of the photos of Terminal 2, action continues, and we hope that beloved terminal will be replaced with something that will be a part of the face of Phoenix's future as well. So we will continue to invest in construction at Sky Harbor and hope that can continue to be the important economic engine and again, provide essential jobs while making smart investments in our city's future. So I think the airport, with the support of the federal government, will be able to come out of this and continue to provide the important support that you all need. And I would say also our airlines have been great partners in this. As we've addressed challenges with PPE, they've said, absolutely, we are willing to get emergency supplies into the market as soon as possible, as well as airlines have been helpful with getting essential healthcare workers where they are needed. And so some great success stories and people really stepping up in this community's time of need, as well as this country's time of need.
Well, you're absolutely correct. It is great to see how the airlines have been really proactive. I will say, as a longtime Phoenician, Terminal 2 going away, that was going to hurt. So I'm assuming we'll get something good. Another question, and maybe it falls along the lines of what you just mentioned as it relates to the ASU data. And the question is, do you think that ASU will follow the same pattern as New York and Chicago, given that we haven't hit our peak yet?
So as we flattened the peak, the models are showing a later date for our peak, but not as significant stress on our healthcare system. And it really is up to all of us. The peak flattened because people stayed home. And so if we continue to practice smart social distancing and data-driven decisions, we can continue to have that flat peak. We are also seeing some advances in medical treatment, which we hope will help our healthcare system address this, and more testing getting out in the community. If we have good, what's called contact tracing, so if I get COVID-19, do we have good data about who I was in touch with? And can we warn them and help them slow the spread? That is also very important. Many people may be familiar with Dr. Tom Frieden, who led the CDC in our country and also a city public health office. And he's really been talking about what cities need to do, which good investments in contact tracing and good investments in testing. And so that as we move into the next phases, we talk about, some people at ASU have been talking about it being like a faucet, and you'll loosen it a little bit and then see what the response is, and we may have to tighten again. And good data is very helpful in making those decisions. So the more we know about who has had COVID-19 in our community, the better, as well as being able to, as quickly as possible, understand who is getting it and react. And then protective equipment will also be very important, particularly for our long-term care facilities. We need to make sure they have good protective equipment. Our hospitals, our first responders. So that supply chain, again, will be essential to how the city of Phoenix can weather this going forward. But we're seeing good forward motion in all of those areas, so that makes me optimistic.
Absolutely. Pivot a little bit to PPE. There's another question about, now that that's run out of money, what other recommendations do you have for small businesses? And I'll add one thing to that that's a concern for us. Chris Camacho and I were talking this week about the fact that there are a lot of businesses that don't have existing banking relationships, so they weren't able to get in on the program, and a lot of our minority-owned businesses had trouble. So we're seeing, I think, a large percentage of small businesses that are deeply impacted by this and that might not have access to those important federal programs. Any thoughts there? I know the IDA program is really going to be key. Any other thoughts?
While we were in this meeting, we just got some exciting news that the IDA found some additional donors and we'll be able to expand that program. So breaking news, but glad to be able to share that.
That's wonderful news.
There is strong bipartisan consensus that we need to be able to expand the federal program. And so I am very optimistic that will happen, and hopefully we can find ways to help those smaller businesses who don't have the key banking relationships. And I have heard on a bipartisan basis from our delegation that that's something that they support and that they are working on. And I think that's something that's important to also our Bankers Association here, and our credit unions are working on that as well. We are happy to work with the chamber if there are any good innovations in how we can get that out. I think we all have our small businesses that we love and support, and there's also great grassroots efforts out there to buy restaurant gift cards now and use them later, or to support your small businesses now. So I would encourage you any way you can to get out there and support favorite small businesses, even if it's sometimes if we can all make small investments, that'll help expand the impact in a big way while we wait for what I think will be action from Washington, D.C.
Absolutely, and I can't thank you enough for the work of that you did with the IDA. It's really, really important. I'm sure that they're really getting a strong response now, and the breaking news is awesome to hear. So thank you for sharing that with us. Another question for you. You alluded to the fact that we're all making tough decisions. You are going to have to lead the city council through some tough decisions on budgets. And the question was, how was the percentage of budget cuts determined, and how might that change based on the March numbers?
So our city worked with economists at our universities and with the best available data to develop different budget scenarios. We have 4 budget scenarios at the city of Phoenix. The 26 million we acted on this week was the least aggressive scenario in terms of deep cuts. So these were some of the, I don't want to say any cuts are easy, but a hiring freeze is much lower impact on our workforce than, taking away people compensation or jobs from people who are already there. And so when we get the March numbers, which will be, we think, 30 to 45 days after the fact, we hope that early action will make it a little bit easier to react. But I do anticipate that we will have to continue to make cuts as we have data. A silver lining has been online sales. So if we had this recession before the reforms that allowed the city to receive sales tax dollars from online sales, it would be a much worse situation. We are hearing that people are doing more and more online consumption. So if you've taken advantage of your favorite store's sale, the city of Phoenix will receive a small percent of that. And so maybe that is something that will help us to get through this. Our city leadership has asked each department at the city to prepare a list of budget cuts of up to 25%. That is very deep. We don't know how deep we will need to go, but we're trying to think about it now so that we can have data, information, and make the best possible decisions. And people can still provide comments at city council meetings now via WebEx instead of in person, but it's certainly an open process and will provide feedback. In past downturns, the city of Phoenix has really prioritized protecting public safety and made cuts in other areas. But those cuts have been difficult, and we just a few months ago restored Sunday hours at our Phoenix libraries, which were cut in the 2008 recession. So we enter this recession, I don't know, economists will be very particular about what words we're using. So we'll just say we entered this decline. The city was already quite lean. We had many areas, including our libraries and parks, where we have not yet restored to 2008 levels. So it's hard to come in already lean and know you have to make further cuts, but we're trying to have the data we need to get through it in the smartest way possible. I would say we have a 3-tiered response at the city. We have folks who are reacting to what is happening now and who are really trying to keep the community safe. Then we have folks who are trying to think about budget management and things on a little bit of a longer term basis. And then we have individuals like Christine Mackey and the folks in economic development who are thinking on a much longer term basis, how do we recover? How do we pivot? How do we think strategically and find as many ways possible for Phoenix to learn from and come out a better city from this? That's advice that I got from some of the top thinkers in management consulting, that you need to be in response mode, but you also need to have people whose job is primarily to think about recovery. And that's something I might recommend for businesses as well.
And you're right. You absolutely have to start thinking about this in multidimensional phases. We're getting multiple questions on the homeless population, what we're doing to keep them safe and to help them ensure that they are able to keep social distance. Any thoughts on that, Mayor?
Absolutely, and that will be the focus of our next Phoenix City Council meeting, as it has been a focus since before COVID-19, but this COVID-19 made everything even more difficult. Among the things the City Council will vote on is additional hotel rooms where people who are experiencing homelessness can go. What we've heard from public health experts is that as much as possible, if we can get vulnerable individuals into smaller spaces where they're less likely to be exposed to COVID-19, that can be an important life-saving measure. And so that's something that we will be looking at, and particularly our older adults and people who have medical challenges like respiratory problems, which make them particularly susceptible to COVID-19. We are working closely with Maricopa County. The county is the lead on public health, and they were able to get additional testing into the campus. The campus has homeless service campus has enhanced safety protocols and testing, including temperature checks. They've set up specific beds for people who we are monitoring for COVID-19 and trying to get ready should there be significant number of individuals who we need to monitor for COVID-19. There's also new facilities throughout the valley that are helping address this. As those of you who follow the city closely know, I have talked a lot about that Phoenix represents 40% of Maricopa County, but 85% of the emergency beds. And I want to thank partners like Mesa, A New Leaf, the nonprofit, and others who have helped create safe spaces for people to go throughout the valley. Large cities have also received federal dollars for emergency shelter, and we're hoping our partner cities will help us find safe places in a more distributed way, because we do know that distance can help slow the spread of COVID-19, and also make sense for many other reasons, including smaller communities. You get more personal services, including casework and support to end homelessness, which I know is everyone's goal. I have been in touch with some of the mayors who have been hardest hit by COVID-19 in their homeless community. Mayor London Breed of San Francisco was gracious yesterday to give me a lot of advice about what they have learned. And she's actually had a good partnership with FEMA, which has provided resources on homelessness, and that was not something that was on my radar screen before that conversation, but we're trying to figure out as many resources as possible to get safe shelter and good healthcare. So we are trying to be creative, and particularly want to thank folks on the campus and Circle the City for doing heroic work.
Well, I appreciate your leadership on this issue. I think that was one of the first things we talked about as a concern way back when this all started. So thank you. Just a quick follow-up. I just got a question that came up asking about who can they speak to about offering hotels to homeless. Is there somebody on your team or in the city that they should reach out to?
Absolutely. You're welcome to contact the mayor's office or our 311. That would be very helpful. Some of the hotels we've reached out to were not enthusiastic about partnering us in this area, and others have stepped up in a big way, but we are in need of additional hotel rooms, so that would be enormously helpful, and we would be grateful if the hotel and tourism community, while they are so hard hit, could help us in this particular area.
Thank you, Mayor. The question on education, and obviously we're a little different because that's more of a state function, but I know that you're heavily engaged on the education front. We launched a laptop drive because there's 100,000 computers that we have a shortage of 100,000 computers. What are you hearing from folks in Phoenix about Wi-Fi connections for kids? I know Cox is doing a lot in that space, but access and making sure they don't really miss that last semester of school.
Absolutely. The Cox Connect to Compete program has been very helpful. We are talking with T-Mobile about a potential program where we might provide tablets to some Phoenicians, particularly those who are partners through our city housing programs, and Wi-Fi for families that have children in the 5 years old to 18 to help them compete. We are happy to work with school districts and others to try to get out some of the great innovations that ASU and others have for online curriculum. And some of our school districts have just done heroic things to get laptops to their students. If there's any telecommunications companies that are out there, we've been thinking about whether we couldn't do partnerships perhaps geographically in certain areas of our city to do big pushes for connectivity and supporting our students, getting them that crucial curriculum. We have some school districts, I believe the Murphy School District did not have enough connectivity to be able to do online curriculum, and it's heartbreaking. We want to do what we can to support students. Superintendent Hoffman has spoken very eloquently about this, but any gaps that existed before COVID-19 have really been exacerbated by it, and want to thank all of the telecom and technology providers who have stepped up to try to help our students get the education they need. Our education office at the city is working as well to try to support the important work that's been doing to improve connectivity. So we would welcome that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Going back to an earlier question,
yeah,
I got information that Christine Mackey, our Economic Development Director, would be the ideal contact for anyone who has hotel space where they'd be willing to work with us at the city. That woman does everything.
She does. I don't think she's slept in about a month. So I think everybody, I have a lot of questions that focus, and I'll just kind of paraphrase that focus on, all right, so we're doing the right thing. We're watching the curve flatten. What are you looking for, Mayor? What kind of data are you looking for when you start to think, okay, let's start to open things back up? Give us a sense for your thoughts on that.
So I think I mentioned earlier, but Dr. Tom Frieden, who led our CDC, has been putting out good data and information about what we need to have in place. And the governor has also said it will not be flipping a switch. It will not be we're here one day. It will be gradual. What was a capacity crowd before COVID-19 will be very different after. So you may be out at our library and the computer that used to be next to you before may not be there. There may be significant distance in between. I have been spending a lot of time in partnership with Maricopa County on testing lately, because again, I think that data is essential to being able to open up and understanding where we are. We want to know that what we're doing is responsible and healthy, and we want to be able to see trends. I am concerned that in parts of our city, we have very few people who've been tested. It's been wonderful to see the huge ramp up, and I think free testing from Walgreens and others will help us address those gaps. I am also trying to figure out, can we get to more mobile testing again so that we can get out and get data from particularly vulnerable communities. So that to me is what needs to be in place for us to really understand. And I would love to see better contact tracing as well, so that we are able to understand the spread better.
So a very data heavy approach, which makes a lot of sense. Do you have confidence that we'll have the amount of testing we will need and the contact tracing? Clearly that's been done, I think, in South Korea and other areas very successfully. Do you think we'll have those resources to be able to do that in short order?
Throughout the country, testing is a huge problem. I really appreciate our universities stepping up and doing some innovation locally. So for all of, thank you to the Chamber for supporting our universities, because this is when we see how important they are and how nimble they are as well. And we're so glad that we have some of the largest testing companies in the United States are here. So again, that does give us some strategic advantages. I assume, like many of you, I've learned more about nasal swabs than I ever wanted to know. That is still a huge shortage, as well as the safety equipment for our first responder, or for the people doing testing. And we at the city are trying to do what we can to support testing. It's been neat to see companies like Fabric, who have pivoted toward making things, gowns and other equipment for those personnel. It does go to show you that local companies with expertise are so meaningful, because you get the most response from the people who are in your backyard and they are helping us get through this. But if there's anyone out there who's sitting on a large stock of PPE, we would love to work with you to scale up. And investments in, I've been really happy to see the philanthropic community invest in TGen, which is doing a great job as well, scaling up testing, but also giving us what's called surveillance testing. We want to have the ability to have networks throughout Maricopa County so that we can spot problems early and respond to them. And all of that infrastructure is key to being able to manage COVID-19 and get back where we all want to be.
Yeah, agreed. And we are fortunate to have ASU and our other state universities being a part of this, and certainly Sonora Quest. Well, what a blessing. So thank you for that, Mayor. Sounds like you agree that we need to do a phased-in approach, agreed, not a flip the switch. So you think it'll be sort of depending on how the testing comes in, that we'll kind of start to open things up gradually and not necessarily just everyone goes back to work? Is that how you're seeing it today?
And that's really what public health professionals have been saying, so that we may go back gradually. People who are particularly vulnerable may need to continue to practice social distancing, and that companies may start with maintaining some of this teleworking for quite a while, so that we look at what can be done with additional protections, and that we really continue to have data and understand what is happening.
Well, thank you. We're about to wrap up. There is a question here that's kind of interesting. Any update on the conversations with Major League Baseball and the concept of having some sort of season here in Arizona?
I assume people are familiar with this, but there's been, if you read the sports page or watch sports news, it's been widely discussed. So the idea of Major League Baseball using those spring training stadiums and having teams play perhaps originally without audiences live at the ballparks. From my perspective, we have to lead with public health. So we would need to have testing capacity for the people who are in Phoenix and not diminish that capacity to be bringing in Major League Baseball. The idea is there would be aggressive testing, and so that we could have good data and they would be effectively in a more isolated situation, so that they would be in hotels and a lot of public health precautions. It's America's pastime, and it would feel so good to have baseball back. It's been a funny spring without it. So if we could lead with public health and know we could do it in a safe way, then it would be something I would like to continue to work on. It would be a great way to support Major League Baseball and to have something that's really meaningful to this community.
You bet. No, I absolutely agree with that. Thank you. One final thing that just popped up, and it's important because you mentioned it. Clearly, census is a big task in any given normal year when we do it. How are we looking this year, given the importance of the census for Arizona? Do you feel like we're going to be able to get the right counts?
So among the largest cities in the country right now, we are number 3, which was exciting news. Phoenix is a little bit behind in terms of valley cities, so would encourage, if you haven't already done your census, please consider doing, oof, excuse me. Please consider doing it. It's so much of oof.
Don't go ahead and take some water. Don't worry. We're about to wrap up, and it is. We did our census like when it was so easy. It took me 5 minutes. Even I could figure it out. And so I'm glad to hear we're number 3. But go ahead.
But so much of the aid for COVID-19 has been allocated based on population. So Atlanta, 500,000 was one of the key marks for cities, and Atlanta was a very close, but just under it, and huge impact to them. A lot of our aid for our most vulnerable is allocated school meals, which are so important right now. That federal aid comes from census. So one way to help your community right now is to make sure that we are accurately counted. And if you have ability to communicate to your employees, please remind them to go online and complete the census if they're able, or eventually we will have the traditional paper census, but a good 10-minute activity while we're all at home.
Well, and such a good reminder that, I mean, the COVID response and those dollars have been so important to us. And there's a direct correlation between the census and those dollars. So thank you for that reminder. To wrap it up, Mayor, I mean, you're out there talking to people in a responsible way, but you're out there talking to people every day, all day. Anything that you can leave us with, sort of an inspiring person or story that we can kind of end the week with?
So one aspect that maybe doesn't get a lot of attention. Yesterday, I was talking with our leaders of our incident command, our public safety officials at the city, and they were talking about, they feel like some of the heroes of this have been the warehouse workers at, particularly for our fire, who still have to staff 72 fire stations and get them all the equipment they need, but have also pivoted to get protective equipment to park rangers, to all of our essential employees. And they've even, when we ran out of decontamination, they found the way to mix their own. So just cool innovation at all levels in our community, but the folks at the warehouse don't always get a lot of credit, and they have truly amazing efforts to keep people safe out there. So that's just one of the folks that have inspired me among so many.
Well, I love that, Mary. And you're right, would have never thought of that, but imagine if they weren't there.
Right.
So thank you for that, Mayor. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for your leadership and strength during this time. We hope that we can have another conversation with you soon as we start to come out of this and hopefully reopen things. So appreciate your time. James, thank you for being with us as well. Thank you to our sponsors, APS, SRP, and Fennemore, where we will see everyone next week. We're going to be having some discussions with an economist, which I think will be exciting. I don't know if we'll beat this turnout that we got with the mayor, but we certainly will look forward to seeing you all soon. So thank you all for joining us and have a great day.